Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome back to another edition of E-Heroes. This is episode 212 for all those that are counting. And I have an awesome guest with me. His name is Rob McCleland. And yeah, it's going to be the interview with two Robs. So,
That's right.
I think that's going to be pretty awesome.
The
So,
Rob Show today.
the Rob Show. So, welcome and thanks for being here. Now, I mentioned off air that I'm actually looking at your website and it's called leadertribe.com. And normally I don't introduce the website right off the
Mhm.
bat. We always wait to the end where you can introduce, the audience to your website. But I think in today's day and age,
Mhm.
post COVID, leaders have forgotten what they're supposed to be doing in society with their companies, with how they're supposed to do things. And they're putting all the shift or all the blame on not being able to find good workers
Right.
or whatever excuse they want. And to me, they're no longer becoming a leader.
Mhm.
They're just becoming, I don't know, somebody that's pushy.
Yeah, let me give you a perfect example of that. There's a Starbucks near our home, and this is 2 or 3 months after restaurants opened back up, and they always had a sign on the door that said, "Sorry, the inside's closed because we can't find enough workers." And then I read a thing saying, no, here's how much more money they make if they don't have to open the inside because it forces everyone through the drive-through. You
Mhm.
only need 3 people total. You don't have to clean the inside. They're making far more profit if they keep that closed. And so then I'd go to the window of the drive-through and I said, "Hey, great news. You said you got people. I've got 12 people that are coming tomorrow for interviews. What time would you like them here?" Things like that. And they're like, "Well, sir, that's really a corporate, it's like, come on. Yeah, you're right. If anything else, just tell the truth. I mean, if you want to be greedy, just say, hey, I'm a greedy SOB, and that's how it is. But tell the truth, love on your people. Those things have been part of the best leaders forever and ever and ever.
As you're telling that story, all I could think about was my local Chick-fil-A. And I love Chick-fil-A,
Hmm.
but every time I'd have to sit in front of, sitting in line, and you get in those long lines and you're like, I just wanted a cup of coffee and I'm going to sit here for 45 minutes waiting to get up there.
Right,
All they had to do was open the door, let me get in, get my coffee.
right.
And no, it was just horrible.
Yeah,
And but oh, and you walk into a restaurant and they force you to use your phone to scan a QR code. Well, I don't. I look at my phone all day long. I'm sitting in
right.
your restaurant. I want a big menu to feel like I've escaped dealing with the phone, and I want something tangible I can look at, feel, and
Now, Chick-fil-A doesn't have this problem, but other restaurants, they would have to actually hire people who know how to talk, though. So that would be really hard.
yeah, it's we're starting to see that shift back. I've been reading a lot about even Apple is starting to say, hey, look, we want you all to come back into the office at least 3 days a week. And people are like, no,
Right.
we don't want to.
Mhm.
I'm like,
Mhm.
you're just an employee. Get your ass to
Mhm.
work.
Yeah. No, and I was always one. I'll tell you where I made a big mistake in this. I've always been one who said, "Hey, in the office every day, we don't do work from home because I'm a big team builder guy, a team guy. My PhD is in organizational leadership. Give me an organization. Let's run this bad boy."
Mhm.
And I was one of those guys. Hey, you can't do $1 million deals or something over the phone. Well, it ends up you can. So I was wrong
Yeah.
on that. Having said that, you do lose something. You lose something in your personal development, if nothing else. I
Mhm.
mean, you take somebody who all they do is Zoom calls and they sit home, their social skills deteriorate like crazy.
Yeah.
And so getting them back in there and doing it, figuring out a way to do it. Now, we didn't have a problem because we had built such a really cool environment around some of that stuff. And I'm not actually running the offices anymore. Most of my work's all in mergers and acquisitions these days, but I do a ton of mentoring and other things. And I don't mentor over the phone or over Zoom. Come see me.
Yeah. I mean, the only time I do Zoom calls anymore is to do this podcast.
Mhm.
I got Zoomed to death. And people say, Rob, join our meeting and it's Zoom. I'm like, you could have just sent me a 5-minute email.
Right.
Instead, I'm sleeping, you know, with your droning on about something, and I'm like, no, we're all zoomed out. We have no more energy. Do something different.
I haven't seen a meme or a GIF or anything that says "zoomed to death." I think you could
Zoomed to
trademark that.
death. But the whole Rob versus series was born, during the pandemic. I mean, the first one
Mhm.
came out 2019, so right before the pandemic. But that one was there to teach everybody about not getting scammed. So it was Rob versus the scammers. And then the pandemic hit, and the first sequel after that was Rob versus the morons. And I couldn't take the way businesses were running, lousy customer service.
Mhm.
The companies that were on the cusp of lousy customer service already just went nuclear and
Mhm.
trashed everything. And so now you can't get them on the phone, you can't get them through email. You got to go to their customer response form and and
Mhm.
and and wait 10 days for them to decide if they're going to handle you or not.
Mhm.
And it became a lesson of who has the most patience. and
Mhm.
and and it wasn't me. I can tell you that much.
Well, hey, I was talking to a really, really sharp young guy in Delaware. So, any of your listeners who live in Delaware and ever need a roof, this guy has a roofing company and he is killing it. And they do unbelievably good work and they stand behind it. And I mean, he's just taking over the state. They're doing tons of roofs. He's making good money, but he does great work. And I said, okay, your business is growing like crazy when others are treading water. Why? And he said, I would tell you, but you won't believe me. I said, I love that answer. Let's go. And he says, because we answer our phone.
Yeah.
And he says, Rob, every single person, I mean, they'll start talking to you. You'll go, hello, Brightside Roofing. And they're like, yes, hello, my name is this. Could you have someone call me at the, it's like, ma'am, I'm here. I'm an actual, and they're like, wait, I've called five other people. No one has answered their phone. And
Hmm.
I'm like, can you imagine that we're at the place in business where all you have to do is answer your phone and be nice and you can stay in business?
Yeah.
Come on, that shows how far customer service has really gone out the window.
Everybody has these devices, but we forgot that they're called mobile phones. Phone is
That's right.
phone is in
Yeah.
the name, and
Yeah,
yet we
we
don't
think they're
use.
only for texting or
Yeah.
scrolling, right?
People are like, Rob, what's your WhatsApp number? And I'm like, what? You're gonna just text me to death? Why don't you just pick up the phone and call me? And a lot of times I'll get an email and it'll have all these things that people want me to do. And instead of me just going through and responding to email, I just pick up the phone and they're like, why are you calling? I sent you an email. I want clarification.
Yeah, that's right. All that stuff you said, what's the really important thing? Okay, good. We'll get you that.
So tell me about Leader Tribe. I mean, why'd you start it?
Yeah. I had believe it or not, a really rough background as a kid. When I say rough, my mom's married and divorced 4 times by the time I was in sixth grade. Never met my dad. Different guy in the house every night when the bars closed. And so supposedly I had a really rough childhood. I found that out when I took some psychological evaluations and other leadership things later on in life, because as far as I knew, my childhood was fine. I lived in a Section 8 housing, welfare, horrible, part, and that was just our life. And I
Mhm.
was running around with all my buddies playing sports, and at least I had a bike. We were riding around, and I knew some of it. I was embarrassed by it. I didn't want people at school to know how bad it was at home, things like that. And so my little sisters and my big sister and I, we just kind of fended for ourselves. I'm just kind of going through life, surviving, having fun. But in sports, I would always sit there and I'd say, "Hey, coach, did you notice when this guy does this? This always happens." And he's like, "Shut up, McClellan." And then all of a sudden he's like, "Okay, now what'd you say?" You know. And I just always could figure things out. Oh, I didn't know what that was, but pretty soon, I have never been the best person on the football team, not even a starter on most of them. But I could be the captain
Mhm.
and other things because it's like, no, 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 we can figure this out. Let's do this. And so that sort of strategy thing was somehow built in. I take no credit for that. I was sort of wired that direction. I didn't know you could study this thing called leadership. So I have a high school counselor. She knows that my home life is hell. So I go into her office one day and she goes, "Hi, these men are from the state of California and they have suits on." And I'm like, "I didn't do anything as far as I was over at the wall, spread my, no, I didn't. I just said, hi. And she said, "Tell them what you're telling me about, just about your home life." And I said, "No, everything's fine." And she goes, "No, Rob, you're not in trouble. No one's in trouble. They're going to give you a lot of money if this works out well." I said, "Let me tell you about my home life." And so basically at the end of that meeting, they had me sign some stuff and I became a ward of the state of California.
Mm.
And as a ward of the state of California, they will pay for you to go to any state college. And so my counselor, as soon as they left the office, she said, "Here you go." And she had already filled out my college application to go to Sac State. No one in my family had ever been to college or anything like that. I didn't even know what, seriously, I had no idea what is the AA or a master's or a bachelor's. I had no idea. And she said, "Hey, you're smart enough. If you would just stop goofing around and apply yourself, you could get out of here. And so go have fun. And here's what you got to do: drive to Sacramento, find a job, that type of thing." And by that time, I was working my butt off all summer, got a car, drove to Sacramento, found a job. And in college is the first time ever I realized I was sort of smart. And again, I didn't, you can take all your IQ tests. It's not like I studied for the IQ test. I was born that way,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't care about being smart. What I cared about is, let's figure this out. Let's figure this out. And so I looked at myself as this MacGyver all of my life. That's all I was a MacGyver. Found out after that you could go into leadership studies. Had some people who said, "Why don't you go do a master's? We'll pay for it." Went and did the master's, finished top of my class in leadership studies. And then, believe it or not, they said, "Hey, so what are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I got a couple job offers and some other stuff, but they want me to do some PhD work too." And the guy goes, "Yeah, why don't you do that as well? We'll pay for it." I'm telling you, these are people that I'm not related to who actually paid for my college, because it's like they saw some little kid who just needed a kick in the rear. And so I went on, finished the top of my class, blah, blah, blah. And, but I love it. And I was told this, Rob, I said, "Hey, whatever you're going to do your dissertation on, make sure you love it, because it's so much work. Halfway through, you're going to hate it no matter what it is." And I came out on the other side loving it more than when I went in. And so it really was a good fit for me. Gone on and done some stuff. Some of your listeners might be familiar with a guy named John Maxwell. He does a ton of leadership stuff. I've run 2 of his companies. I've done some cool stuff. And all God's people said, "Who cares?" What I want to tell you is, to me, if you get the right team and they believe in themselves and they're going to bring their best to the table every week. And I'll tell you what that means to me. That means no parking lot conversations. That means, our boss says something, we go out to the parking lot and I go, "Rob, that guy's such an idiot. What is he even thinking? I mean, there's no chance that's going to, okay, Mr. Big Shot, why are you saying it out here in the parking lot, but you didn't say it back in there?" And could you imagine a place going to work where people go like, "Hey, boss, no, you've had some dumb ideas in the past, but that's the worst ever. This isn't going to work. What about?" And so we started building that environment. I came across a guy named Pat Linciani. He does the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and he has done the research to show that is the best leadership. And so started building teams, doing things, and I just loved it. And so that has progressed, and now I do that with business owners on a weekly basis. I teach business owners, when you are going to sell, I don't care if that's now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, there are 16 steps that you need to do to get the most money. And so let's jump in and go. And they are counterintuitive, man. I mean, it is just so much fun that in the morning, they're sort of like this. And by 10 o'clock, like this. And by 1 o'clock, they're like, "Okay, this is awesome." They finally know that they can trust you, that you're telling the truth. And so it's all the things you've already said. Just tell the truth, show up, believe in people, love on them. And life is really, really fun. So I put Leader Tribe together because I had to have an outlet. I am such a geek. I do research every day. You're like, "Oh, yeah? Do you do research on Christmas?" Yes, I do. Thank you very much. And my research is not hard. I have the Harvard sites and Yale and Stanford, a couple others that send me, "Here's anything that hit their website overnight." And so I looked through some of that and some other big leadership sites, and I just kind of scroll, and I go, "Ooh, that looks good." And then I start reading it, like, "That's stupid." And I scroll, and I look, "That looks good." And I look at, "Ooh, that's good." And I just forward it to myself. I did one of my episodes on a podcast called 4 Gmail Accounts to Organize Your Life. And so I just forward whatever that is to leadertribeideas@gmail.com. Right. And so now when I'm going to do podcasts or somebody's going to have me on, or they say, could you ever speak on, I've got 400 or 500 things. I go over, I put in one search word, and all of a sudden I've got, yeah, Stanford University did a study, and what they discovered, and I sound brilliant, right? No, it's not. It's just because I just do that all the time. I love it. And what am I going to do with all of that?
You know,
So I started putting it all out for free.
I do the
And
same thing. I research all the time, but you call it scientific. I call it ADD.
yeah. And remember, if you research from one person, that's plagiarism. From 10, it's research. So go. All right. And so all I did is, I've got blogs. I've got 150 blogs, 800 podcasts. All of that is free. You put in any search word on team building, on why don't I shut up? I have to read that one myself a lot. And anything that you want in that search, and you're going to find 4 or 5 opportunities. So I just did it for my friends.
Yeah. And I know you're a geek. I'm a geek. We
Right.
love MacGyver, and I use MacGyver as a reference in a lot of my storytelling.
I love it.
And I always tell people, 7 years of watching MacGyver, I've learned a few things. And they're like, there's not 7 years of MacGyver. I said, not this new MacGyver pansy thing. The old MacGyver with Richard Dean Anderson. And they're like, who?
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like,
the new one, that's
he
like
went
some
on
made
the Stargate, and they're like, what? What's the Stargate? And I'm like, that's it. I'm out of here. Can't do it.
That's really funny. Tell them, hey, that new one, that's just made for TV. The old MacGyver, he's the real deal.
Yeah, I watched one episode of the new one, and I'm like, nope, not for me.
I'm out. So tell me about that. As far as, you're brilliant when you come up your Rob verses, and you just start all this different material. And I read it, and not only is it incredibly funny, so way to go, great sense of humor, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
And so it's fun to read. How did you start coming up with that idea?
Well, when I started sharing out these stories of me just dealing with the scam calls that I got all the time, Visa, MasterCard people, and I started sharing them out to Facebook, and people are like, well, Rob, you already wrote these brilliant other books. Why don't you write a book on this? And I thought, okay. So I started assembling them, and I'm like, okay, how big do I want to make this book? But all my other books are around 120, 150 pages, because I always wanted to make books easy for people to
digest and
consume in a relatively short amount of time. And so I assembled these stories together, shopped them around, and to get kind of people, hey, do you like this book? What do you think? And people were calling me back, and they're like, Rob, I almost wet myself reading it. I was laughing so much. But my whole goal was not only to entertain, but to educate. So at the end of every story in a book, I always have a note. This is why you should avoid, dealing with scam calls. This is why. And I've always, and when I'm dealing with lousy customer service or whatever, I always have some note so that they go from laughing to learning, and then they go back to laughing. And I've made more contacts, more money off the Rob versus books because they make people laugh than I have on all the other ones. And they're all the other ones are all brilliant, and they teach something. But it was the sarcasm and the humor that really gets people to remember who you are.
Okay, so let me give you the research on that. Are you ready? Hey, no, this is how it is. If you're taking in a bunch of information, it's like it's a bunch of flour going down. And then if you can get somebody to laugh, and officially we call it levity in the research studies, give them some levity moment. You know what happens is it shakes it down. And it creates more room. Now they're ready to learn. If you just keep learning, they shut off. It's like, no, this is drinking from a fire hose. Every time you shake it down and laugh, people are ready to learn more. So you're so brilliant. You are brilliant without knowing you are brilliant.
I that's what I tell people all the time. I'm stupidly brilliant, and they're like, what? My whole goal at first was just to get people more laughter, because
Mhm.
I feel that the whole pandemic made people forget how to laugh. Everybody was in serious mode. You know, don't touch me. You're going to get me sick. Oh, just read the damn book. Um,
Oh, by the way, there might be COVID terms on it from the publisher. Who knows? I was one of those really geeky, weird people that people loved or hated. I flew every week during COVID. Every single week I was on an airplane. I've been on jumbo jets where there were 9 of us. And
wow.
you know what's great is the flight attendants, they'd say things like this. Hey, look, there's only 9 people. Sit wherever you want. We don't even care. But we still have to do our thing because one of you might be a spy, and then we don't want to go with this. So, and they're doing all their, they're having so much fun pointing out to the things, and everybody just ends up sitting, hey, where are you going? What are you doing? That kind of stuff. So it was a blast for me. What was really strange though is I mean, walking through major airports, DFW, where mine were the only footsteps I could hear sometimes.
Yeah. I mean,
And yeah, it was insane.
it, I flew to El Paso to visit my son, and the airport was empty. Although my plane was delayed, so I had to run at high speed. And I missed my connecting flight by like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, because all the passengers, well, no, it went with 0 passengers. It could have waited.
it just flew.
Yeah,
I'm like, this is great.
whatever.
But yeah, it's just leadership over the last 2 years has really faltered. Now it's starting to come back. I've been watching a lot of what some of these big Fortune 500 companies are doing. Although the employees themselves aren't getting much of a pay raise, the CEOs are walking away with billions of dollars, and you're like,
I figured out how to monetize this whole thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
it's crazy when we're talking about Apple. Hey, come back in 3 days a week at least, and then the employees are fighting on them. You wanted to say, okay, wait, time out. Let's define employer employee real quick. But I do think that because of the pandemic, I see these people who appear, I would say they appear more entitled. Hey, no, you can't do that. And it's like, if you want me to work here, it's like, wait, who's interviewing here? I'm not desperate. And so I tell people right now, it's more important than ever. Hold out, higher 9s and 10s. And if somebody's an 8.5 and they've got really good people skills and they have a good track record, give them to your competitor. Hold out, hire a 9 or a 10. Because when you get 9s or 10s, and they're still out there, and when you do, life gets fun. You laugh, you get your work done. You're happy to work there, and I found seriously, I can work with about 40% less staff than other people if you have all 9s and 10s, and we'll still kill them in the marketplace. And I take that extra money I saved on payroll and spoil them to death.
mm-hmm. The pro. I like the pro and con of the Rob versus books, and I've shared this with my audience before. The pros are it gets people to laugh that have a sense of humor. Those that don't have a sense of humor won't like my books and will never call me to be a client. So
Oh, that's funny.
it's kind of rejection marketing right off the bat. You don't like sarcasm, you're not going to like me, so we're not going to get along.
Yeah, hold on. I'm going to make money off this show. Zoomed to death, rejection marketing. Come on, you're killing it here.
See, that's what happens when you put two Robs together.
Yeah. Who both happen to have a sense of humor. What? Come on. Yeah. Rejection marketing. I'm going to do that. So have you written any book? Yeah, it was on rejection marketing. It didn't go that well.
Got rejected right away.
Yeah. They didn't even let me get to the marketing part. I don't know what happened.
Yeah. So you have a podcast too, and that's called
I do. Leader Tribe, your daily dose of growth. I'm so old school. I got a little wiki in my bumper, and it's like, you're listening to Leader Tribe, where leaders are made daily, but never in a day. This is, what is it? We're talking information that's relevant, researched, and ready for action. Here's your daily dose of growth with Dr. Rob McCleland. I always start out the same way. After the bumper music comes, I jump on and go, hello, Leader Tribers. How in the world are you? We've only got about 8 minutes today. Buckle your seatbelts. Here we go. And then I jump in. do my little dog and pony thing. And all I've done is some research that I found that I really like and I'm passionate about it, share it real quick. And then at the end, I go, that's it until tomorrow. Much love. I'm out. So I get in, I get out, and I just have fun with it.
And the funny thing is back in 2017, I co-wrote a book called Power Guesting, how to be a good guest on podcasts, and one of the examples of even creating your own show is to have an intro and an outro. So you have these bumper musics. Well, I try to be low tech, so I do very little editing. I don't put bumpers on. People are like, but Rob, you're doing it all wrong. And I'm like, yeah, but I've done 200 episodes. I don't give a shit.
That's right. And the average podcast lasts, are you ready for this? 7 episodes. So, dude, you're killing it.
So, I interview awesome people, and I get them to share their superpowers with other people. And if they get jobs out of it, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah. And if I could share one thing with your audience as far as helping them and the ones who can do this in the superpower, it is actually care. And this is the one little survey it was Johns Hopkins. Basically, Johns Hopkins, one of the great hospitals in the world, often the top rated hospital in the world. Okay, so now you got Johns Hopkins, and they're noticing, though, that the patients are complaining and they're seeing their physician scores plummeting. And here's what they said: hey, the doctors around here, they don't care about me anymore. They just kind of do their little thing. And so then they went and they surveyed all the doctors. Guess what they found out? The doctors didn't care about them anymore. And it was because of the way we do medicine now. They've got to see X number of patients per hour, And so it was, hey, your name's Rob. Okay, could you spell your last name? Kind of weird. Okay, great. Are you still taking blood pressure and cholesterol? Okay. And then this, okay, it says here, have you had a tetanus shot in the last? Okay, why are you coming in today? Okay, hold on. Yeah, okay, definitely here. I'm gonna prescribe, and they would go out. Okay, so now Johns Hopkins is freaking out. What are they gonna do? How can we get it for the patients to seem like, that's the wrong question anyway, but they asked, how can they get it to seem like the doctors care about them more? Yeah. And so they started doing all these different things. Here's the one that they came up with, and it works. It works, but here's the problem. It takes a full 40 seconds.
That's too long.
I know, right? Yeah, sorry, I'm out. Yeah. And here's what it is. It's like, hey, they came in and they would take their computer and they'd kind of just tilt the screen down, like that a little bit. And they'd say, hey, we'll get to that in a minute. But first, hey, my name's Dr. Rob. And what was your name? Great. Okay, why are you here today, really? Mm-hmm. And then here was the key. Direct eye contact, never losing eye contact, because our attention span's about 7 or 8 seconds max today. They would never lose eye contact. And they go, tell me more. Okay, well, how does that make you feel? Tell me more. Okay, what do you really think the problem is? And all of a sudden they go like, well, doc, it's like, okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to walk through you with everything. You're not alone in this. Let me ask you a couple of questions. And then they'd do their little thing. Scores skyrocketed. This hospital has the most caring doctors. And so they were trying to fake out the patients to think the doctors cared. But here's what the research showed. It's really scary. Guess what? The doctors started caring. Mm-hmm. If they would just get all over themselves and spend a few moments reconnecting as a human being. So I go and I blow up this research and I start telling these fun stories. And I go to a place, speaking at a friend's conference in Nashville. In Nashville, I tell this story and I talk about 40 seconds of eye contact and to increase your caring and have people actually love you. I did something like that. Okay. The next day I get something. This is a defense lawyer in Las Vegas. Is that not the greatest job in the history of the world? Right? Hey, anything that happens in Vegas, it stays in Vegas. Except in your case, it's in a police, one of those. So, world's greatest job, defense lawyer in Vegas. And she writes me and she goes, hey, Dr. Rob, I was at your thing in Nashville. And I thought, I wonder if that could even work for a lawyer. So here's what I did. My 7 clients I saw today, when they came in, I'd walk in with my yellow pad and my other stuff, and I always start the same way, but I didn't do it. I put it down, I put the pencil on, I said, hey, I got to get some information in a minute, but first, tell me what's really going on. And then, okay, well, how's that make? And she goes, and I'd ask them a few questions. And said, oh, okay, well, I'm going to be with this, and let me get some info. And she'd go on, do her thing. She said, out of 7 patients today, 4 out of the 7 said, you're the most caring lawyer I've ever met with in my life. And then she writes in all caps at the bottom, it's only 40 seconds. And I said, now, do you care anymore about those people? She goes, you know what? I really do, because when you hear their heart, and so for your listeners out there, you want a superpower? No matter what your superpower is, take an extra 40 seconds. Don't lose eye contact. And your superpower just got 10x in their mind because they think this person's for me.
Yeah, unless you're me, and I'll go like this.
Okay, I did have one client. I shared it with him. I went home. He goes, Dr. Rob, he was a Indian brother. And so I got a ton of Indian friends. They're going to kill me because I can't do their accent very well. He's like, Dr. Rob, I tried it. It does not work. It does not work. I said, what do you mean? He said, I tried it with my wife last night. and I said, okay, tell me about it. I said, I got home, I put down my phone and looking at her. And she said, why are you looking at me? Stop staring at me. You're a creeper. Look at your phone or something. So it was only one time. Everybody else it's worked for, but for that guy, he has to look at his phone. His wife doesn't want him to.
She's not a paying client, so it's
not
going to work.
You go. Okay. Well, see, you've already solved that. It would have taken me a
while. You have to be a paying client for it to work.
Rob, thanks so much. You are so much fun, not only your books, but in person. And I really appreciate the time to jump on.
I'm only fun on the internet and on podcasts. When I'm out by myself or with my kids, they can attest I'm not.
Well, good for you on that multiple personality thing. It's working for
they don't like going to the store with me because I touch everything. If it's one of those toys that make a noise.
Oh yeah. And it says press here and you do, and the batteries are down. It's like, then take the little press here sticker off, right? Come on.
Don't tempt me.
Yeah, that's adult ADD. I'm like, I love that. I love attention. Come on.
So everyone who's listening and wants to learn more about Rob, other Rob,
hit me up. Yeah, leadertribe.com and just rob@leadertribe.com. And seriously, what I do is any way I can help you, your guests. I have access to all that stuff so quickly. It's not hard for me. I'd love to help you. What's your deal? And then if it ever turns into something, a full-on executive coaching. By the way, my dissertation was the 11th one ever done in the field of executive coaching. So that's a part of my real gig. But it's not like I do, okay, the first one's for free, and then we'll talk about, I just help people, and then if it turns into something great. But thankfully, my wife and I have done well. We started a family foundation. And so what we do is we take people overseas and let them help people who really have needs. And they're like, oh my goodness, I guess I didn't have it bad after all.
Yeah, that's great. And that's what makes you an e-hero. And for all the audience, please go to leadertribe.com, visit Rob, say hi, tell him I sent you, or don't. It's up to you. But, he's brilliant stories, as you can tell. He knows what he's doing. He does the research and he remembers it. So, this was a great episode, and I'll see you guys on the next one.